I heard her insult before I saw her face. It floated across the ballroom wrapped in fake laughter and champagne bubbles, deliberately loud, meant to land exactly where it did. "Oh, wonderful," she said. The barn girl finally showed up. Her bridesmaids laughed on cue, soft, polished, expensive laughter. She didn't even look at me. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a flaw, a stain on the aesthetic of her perfect night. What she didn't know, what no one in that glittering room knew, was that I signed the deed to this building 3 years ago. Every crystal chandelier above her head, every marble tile beneath her heels, every flute of champagne in her manicured hand, all mine. And by the end of the night, that careless whisper was going to cost her everything. My name is Elena Hart. I'm 32 years old and I grew up in Briar Hollow, a town so small the grocery store closed at 6 and everyone knew your business by noon. If you blinked while driving through, you missed it. I left when I was 18 with one suitcase, $200, and the clear understanding that I wasn't the child my family had wanted. That role belonged to my older brother, Nathan. Nathan was perfect. Or at least perfect enough. He was praised for breathing correctly. I was corrected for existing too loudly. If I succeeded, it was luck. If he succeeded, it was destiny. My mother, Judith, never said she was disappointed in me. She didn't have to. She had a look for that. So I left. Not because I hated home. Because there was no room for me in it. Everyone back in Briar Hollow assumed I was struggling, that I lived in a tiny apartment, worked forgettable jobs scraped by. For a while, they were right. My first real job was cleaning rooms at a boutique hotel in the city. I scrubbed toilets, changed sheets, learned how luxury was built from the inside out. I watched, I listened, I remembered everything. Front desk, assistant manager, operations, revenue. I learned how hotels actually made money. I learned where people lied, where they cut corners, where they failed, and I learned how to win quietly. By 29, I bought my first property. By 31, I owned 5. By 32, I ran Northline Hospitality, a private company with hotels up and down the coast. The ballroom I stood in that night? Flagship property. But my family didn't know any of that. They never asked. To them, I was still the awkward girl who left town and never amounted to much. That was fine. Real power doesn't announce itself. Tonight was my brother's engagement party. The invitation came late, an afterthought. A box checked so my mother could say all her children were present. I almost didn't come. Almost. I walked into the ballroom wearing jeans, boots, and a jacket that looked simple and cost more than most cars. My hair still smelled faintly of pine because I'd driven through Briar Hollow earlier that day. I wanted to remember who I was before a LL of this. I spotted my mother across the room, holding court, bragging about her son's future, his brilliant fiancé, their perfect life. My brother stood beside Claire Montgomery, beautiful, polished, deadly charming. She smiled like a woman who believed she'd already won. She looked at me like dirt had wandered inside. Good. Let her underestimate me, because I'd learned something important a long time ago. When people think you're nothing, they stop protecting themselves. And tonight? They were about to make a very expensive mistake. The party was exactly what you'd expect from someone like Claire Montgomery. Excess dressed up as elegance, crystal ice sculptures shaped like swans, imported flowers flown in that morning, a champagne tower so tall it felt less like celebration and more like a warning sign. Everything was designed to impress people who already believed they deserved to be impressed. My staff executed it flawlessly, which made it even harder not to smile. I took a drink from the bar and moved to the edge of the room, watching, observing. That's when my mother found me. Judith Hart approached with the same tight smile she'd worn my entire childhood. Her eyes flicked to my boots and stayed there just long enough to register disapproval. "It's nice you could make it," she said, as if the words tasted wrong. Then came the critique. She asked why I couldn't have worn something more appropriate. She stressed that Claire's family was very refined, as though refinement were contagious and I might catch it if I stood correctly. I told her I came straight from work, which was true. I just didn't clarify that work meant running a hospitality company worth 8 figures. She sighed. The old sigh. The one that said, "Why are you like this?" without ever asking. Then she drifted away, already embarrassed by me. 20 seconds. That's all it took for me to feel 12 years old again. I spotted Claire across the ballroom, gliding from group to group, air-kissing cheeks, laughing on cue. Every move was calculated, every smile measured. Her parents stood nearby, Richard and Evelyn Montgomery, watching her like proud investors waiting for their return. They looked wealthy. They acted wealthy. But something felt off. Richard checked his phone too often. Evelyn touched her jewelry like she was afraid it might vanish. And Claire, perfect Claire, had a sharpness in her eyes that had nothing to do with joy. Then my brother noticed me. Nathan crossed the room with the distracted enthusiasm of a man who'd already moved on emotionally. He said he was glad I came, asked if I'd met Claire yet. "She's incredible," he said, already looking past me. I nodded. Then he said something that made the room tilt. "Mom gave Claire Grandma's necklace as an engagement gift," he said. "Wasn't that generous?" I felt it before I saw it. The necklace, my grandmother's necklace, an antique pendant she promised to me when I was 16. She held my hand and told me it was meant for the one who dreamed bigger than the town could hold. My mother had been in the room when she said it, and she gave it away anyway. I looked across the room and there it was, hanging at Claire's throat like it had always belonged to her. My inheritance, my memory. Glittering under the chandeliers, the music got louder. Or maybe my head did. I needed air. I slipped out toward the restroom corridor when I passed Richard Montgomery mid-conversation. He didn't see me. His voice was tight, strained. "We need this wedding," he said into his phone. "The Hart family has money. We just need to get through the ceremony." I stopped walking. Money? What money? My parents had a mortgage. Actually, two. I knew because I'd been quietly paying the second one off for 4 years. Nathan had a stable job. Nothing extraordinary. There was no family fortune. So why did Richard Montgomery think there was? And what exactly did he need covering? I spent the next hour watching them. Really watching. Now that I knew something was wrong, the cracks were everywhere. The constant phone checks. The forced smiles. Claire's hunger masked his charm. Then it hit me. For years, I'd been sending money home anonymously through my company. Mortgage payments, medical bills, repairs. I never put my name on anything? My parents didn't know it was me, and of course, my mother assumed it was Nathan. In her version of reality, her golden child was secretly successful, generously supporting the family. She bragged, she boasted, and the Montgomerys listened. They saw a comfortable house, heard stories of investments, a family that appeared wealthy, and they targeted my brother like professionals. Only problem? They were chasing a mirage. There was no hidden fortune. There was only me. And I could stop the money with a single phone call. I found Marcus, my operations director, near the service entrance. "I need background," I told him. "On the Montgomerys, everything." He didn't ask why. That's why I trusted him. Claire found me shortly after. She guided me to a quiet corner, all smiles until we were alone. Then the mask dropped. She told me she knew about the money I sent home, called it pathetic, said I was trying to buy affection from people who didn't care. She said Nathan told her everything. How I was jealous, how I couldn't handle not being the favorite, how the family only tolerated me out of obligation. Then she leaned closer. "Honestly," she said, "it would be better for everyone if you stayed away. No one would miss you." She walked off smiling. She thought I was broke. She thought the money came from Nathan. She had no idea who she was talking to. Marcus returned 10 minutes later. His face was pale. "Elena," he said quietly, "they're not just in debt." He handed me a folder. "They're under investigation." I didn't open the folder in the ballroom. I knew better than that when something is already unraveling. You don't tug at the thread in public. You step away. You let it breathe. You give it space to tell you the truth. I walked down to the parking garage, the sound of music fading behind me, replaced by the hollow echo of my boots against concrete. The lights flickered overhead like they were nervous, too. I sat in my car and opened the folder. Financial filings, court records, news clippings. Each page was worse than the last. The Montgomerys weren't just wealthy people having a temporary setback. They were desperate people hiding behind expensive clothing and borrowed confidence. Their real estate empire wasn't an empire at all. It was a collapsing maze of shell companies, inflated valuations, and investor money being shuffled just fast enough to delay disaster. A classic con. Old money doesn't move like this, only fear does. I kept reading. 6 months. That's how long they had left before everything came crashing down. Auditors were circling. Lawsuits were stacking up. Federal agencies had already opened files. This wedding wasn't a celebration. It was an exit strategy. I closed the folder and leaned my head back against the seat. They thought my family had money. They thought marrying into us would give them cover. Earned everything within the hour. And then she said something that made the night feel razor sharp. "They've been avoiding arrest," she said. "If they surface publicly with proof, law enforcement will move fast." I looked back at the ballroom, at the stage, at the microphone, at the screens behind it. The Montgomerys were counting on this night to protect them. They were about to learn the opposite was true. I handed Marcus a flash drive. "When the father starts his toast," I said, "I want the screens live." He didn't hesitate. "What's on it?" "Truth," I said. "Answer." Richard dropped the microphone. He tried to move through the crowd, but security stepped smoothly into place, blocking his path. Evelyn grabbed his arm, whispering frantically. I stepped forward, boots on marble, every head turned. Marcus's voice came through the speakers, calm and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to introduce the owner of the venue and CEO of Northline Hospitality, Ms. Elena Hart." The silence was deafening. My mother's face drained of color. Nathan stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Claire finally looked at me, really looked. I took the microphone. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, "but I thought you deserved to know who you're celebrating tonight." I gestured to the screens. The Montgomerys are not who they claim to be. Their wealth is stolen, their businesses are fraudulent, and the woman my brother was about to marry isn't named Claire Montgomery. Claire screamed that I was lying, that I was jealous, that I was nobody. I smiled. "Then it should be easy to explain why federal agents are outside this building." The ballroom doors opened. 4 people in dark suits entered, badges visible. Richard bolted. He made it 10 feet. An agent caught his arm and spoke quietly, professionally. "You are under arrest for wire fraud, investment fraud, and conspiracy." Evelyn collapsed into tears. Claire turned to Nathan. "You love me," she pleaded. "Tell them they're wrong." Nathan looked at her for a long moment. Then he stepped away. "I don't know who you are," he said quietly. Claire screamed. She lunged toward me. Security stopped, her inches away. I leaned in close enough for only her to hear. "You should have stayed quiet," I said. "This building belongs to me." They led her away screaming, her perfect dress wrinkled, her future gone. I turned back to the room. "The bar is open," I said. "The food's paid for, no reason to waste it." Nervous laughter followed. The DJ restarted the music. The engagement party was over, but the truth? That was just getting started. The ballroom didn't erupt, it exhaled. That was the strange part. After the shouting, the arrests, the screaming collapse of a life built on lies, there was a hollow quiet. Like a theater after the curtain drops and the audience isn't sure whether to clap or leave. People stood frozen with champagne glasses halfway to their lips. Someone laughed softly, uncertain. Someone else whispered, "Did that really just happen?" The Montgomerys were escorted out in handcuffs. Claire, Lauren, whatever name she was wearing tonight, kept screaming until the doors closed behind her. The sound cut off abruptly, like a switch flipped. Just like that, the spell broke. My mother sank into the nearest chair as if her legs had forgotten how to work. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. Not angry, not defensive, lost. Nathan found me near the bar. He didn't speak at first. He just stared at the floor, hands shaking, breathing like someone who'd just escaped a burning building and hadn't realized it yet. "How long did you know?" he asked finally. "Tonight," I said. "The rest I suspected." He nodded slowly. "I felt something was wrong," he said. "I just didn't listen. I didn't correct him. This wasn't the moment for scorekeeping." "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." The words sounded unfamiliar in his mouth. I studied him carefully, searching for the catch I'd learned to expect. There wasn't one. "Sorry is a beginning," I said, "not a solution." He nodded again. "I know. That was enough for now." My mother approached hesitantly, like someone stepping onto thin ice. She looked at me the way she never had before, not as a problem to be managed, but as a stranger she was trying to understand. "I didn't know," she said softly. I pulled out my phone and showed her the transfers, years of them, mortgage payments, medical bills, repairs, quiet support with no name attached. Her mouth trembled. "You thought it was Nathan," I said gently. "You always did." Her breath caught. I was wrong, she whispered. Yes, I said, you were. I didn't say it cruelly, just truthfully. Nathan returned holding something in his hand, the necklace, my grandmother's necklace. It must have fallen during the chaos. He held it carefully, like it might break if he squeezed too hard. This was always yours, he said. He placed it in my palm. The weight felt right, familiar, like something lost finally finding its way home. My mother watched, tears sliding down her face. I'm sorry, she said again. I believed her. That didn't mean everything was forgiven, but it meant something could be rebuilt, slowly, honestly, without pretending. The party limped on. People drifted out in clusters, murmuring. A few stayed, clinging to the open bar and the surreal energy of the night. The DJ played softer music. The ice sculptures melted. By midnight, the ballroom was almost empty. I stood alone near the windows, watching the city lights flicker below. Marcus joined me. Well, he said, that was memorable. I smiled faintly. Thank you, I said, for everything. You gave them exactly what they earned, he replied. No, I thought, they gave it to themselves. 3 weeks later, the city woke up to the truth. The Montgomerys, every name they'd ever used, were charged with wire fraud, investment fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Federal investigators had been building the case for years. All they needed was visibility. That night gave it to them. The woman once known as Claire Montgomery, real name Lauren Pierce, was denied bail. Too many aliases. Too many disappearing acts. Loud. The country girl owned the room. I framed that one. It hangs in my office now. Nathan came to see me a week later. He stood in my office doorway like someone waiting for permission to enter a world he didn't know existed. He took in the glass walls, the skyline, my staff moving with quiet efficiency. You built all this, he said softly. Yes, I said, I did. We went to lunch, not a family obligation, not a tense truce, a real conversation. We talked about childhood, about expectations, about silence, about how easy it is to mistake proximity for connection. I didn't see you, he said. Not really. I know, I replied, but I want to, he said, if you'll let me. I didn't promise anything, but I didn't say no. My mother started therapy. She told me herself, voice small, uncertain. She said she wanted to understand why she measured love the way she did, why she praised one child by shrinking the other. We're rebuilding slowly, without pretending the past didn't happen. That's the only way it works. This morning I hosted a business breakfast in the hotel restaurant. Investors, partners, quiet deals over good coffee. A young woman walked in, visibly nervous. Simple clothes, practical ponytail. The kind of presence people dismiss without thinking. One of the guests scoffed, asked who let her in. I stood, walked over, took her hand. Everyone, I said, this is Maya Collins, this year's recipient of the Northline Hospitality Scholarship. I told them she grew up in a small town, worked 2 jobs, was heading to Cornell's hotel management program in the fall. The room went silent. I seated her at my table. She whispered, thank you. I leaned in and said, don't thank me yet. Just don't forget where you came from, or where you're going. After the breakfast, I stood in the lobby and watched guests move through the space. They didn't know who I was, and they didn't need to. Power doesn't require recognition. People will always try to make you feel small because of where you came from. Let them. While they're busy looking down, they won't notice you rising. I learned that lesson in a town that never thought I'd matter. I carried it through years of silence, work, and quiet refusal to fail. And now, I stand in a building I own, surrounded by a life I built, completely visible to myself, even if no one else sees me. The girl they dismissed, the woman they underestimated. She didn't need to announce herself. She already owned the room.